Good evening. I'm Donna Bartlett May with the League of Women Voters of San Diego, and I will be your moderator for this virtual candidate forum for San Diego City Council District 2. This forum is being co-hosted by the League of Women Voters of San Diego, Claremont Town Council, and San Diego 350. Michelle, you wanted to say a few words on behalf of San Diego 350?
Yes, please. Thank you so much for attending the forum, candidates, and for my co-hosts, the League of Women Voters and the Claremont Town Council. San Diego 350 is an inclusive volunteer organization building a movement to prevent the worst impacts of climate change and climate injustice. We strive to create a future that supports a livable planet and just society through education and outreach, public policy advocacy, and mobilizing people to take action. Our vision is for an informed, mobilized, and united community that is empowered to reduce our carbon footprint and hold our elected officials accountable for creating a low carbon, sustainable, and just world. Our power comes from our alliance with organizations advancing social justice, environmental protection, fair labor efforts, and public health, faith, and other partners. So thank you once more, and we look forward to hearing your answers to our questions.
Thank you, Michelle. The League is also proud to be nonpartisan. We do not support nor do we oppose candidates or political parties. The views expressed are those of the candidates. Sponsorship of the forum is not an endorsement of any candidate by the League or the other sponsors. I'd now like to welcome our candidates, Jennifer Campbell, Joel Day, Mandy Havlick, Linda Lucas, Lori Saldana, and Daniel Schmachowski. Welcome, everybody. The League moderates candidate forums using a format that is fair and informative. We have asked the candidates to keep to the issues of the position rather than personal attacks because our goal is for the voters to be able to learn more about candidates than they get from campaign ads and social media. A League website is now available that is your comprehensive, nonpartisan online guide to elections covering federal, state, and local races. This website is called Voters Edge California, and you'll find a link for it in the chat. All candidates for local offices have been invited to include their information on the website at no cost. And we are very excited to announce that KPBS Radio is now directing their listeners to Voters Edge. This forum is being recorded and will be available unedited from beginning to end on our lwvsandiego.org website. Questions were submitted online before the forum, and you may also submit questions now using the link provided in the chat box. Please remember to use civility and respect in wording your questions and frame them so all candidates can answer. Questions will then be organized to ensure topics of greatest interest are asked. Assisting tonight are League question screeners Jane Andrews and Stephanie Sontag and Michelle Morgan from San Diego 350. The timekeeper is League member Jean Widener, and our Zoom administrator is Kim Knox. Candidates will have 2 minutes for their opening statements, 2 minutes for their closing, and 1 minute to respond to each question from the audience. We will go in alphabetical order for opening statements and reverse that order for closing statements. Questions will be asked then in random order. Candidates tonight will now start their opening statements. Ms. Campbell?
Thank you. Good evening. I'm Dr. Jennifer Campbell, MD. I'm passionate about serving our community. I spent my 40-year career in family medicine, and I ran for this office on City Council 4 years ago because I knew our neighborhoods deserved better. In that campaign, I pledged to voters that I would take action on the top 3 issues at that time: homelessness, housing, and short-term rentals. Nobody before me had been able to resolve that problem, and I have. On short-term rentals, after years of inaction, I was able to forge a compromise to reduce the number of short-term vacation rentals in San Diego by 50%. This will make more housing available for our families and make our neighborhoods safer and more livable. On homelessness, as a family physician, I see this as a health crisis, and that's why I helped expand San Diego's safe parking lots for homeless people living in their vehicles. 47% of those in the program find permanent housing within 6 months. On housing, I have voted for every single housing measure brought to City Council for more affordable and middle-class housing to come to our city. As far as COVID goes, I put my healthcare experience to work, keeping us safe. We stopped evictions, we followed science, and now we have 90% vaccination rate, among the highest in the nation. When I was a doctor, I helped patients stay healthy, and now I'm a council member, and I keep solving problems and helping our community. And we have to keep up this work because working families are struggling. I'm proud to be endorsed by Mayor Todd Gloria, Nathan Fletcher, the Healthcare Workers Union, and many, many more. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and I'm looking forward to the conversation tonight.
Thank you very much. Mr. Day?
Hi, everyone. Thank you to the host for bringing us together to talk about the important issues facing our city and this district. I'm running because we need to make our city council work for working families, not special interests. Right now, it feels like every turn we are failing residents and instead funding special interests, or at least funding some of the campaigns that they support. We have a crisis of homelessness. We have a crisis of climate adaptation and climate resilience. We have a crisis of income inequality and housing unaffordability. But y'all, at the center of this crisis is a crisis of confidence in the old ways of doing politics, and that the politicians who run this town don't have a serious plan. They're not working for us. They're not working for working families. Now, I've seen the dysfunction at City Hall firsthand, and I'm proud of the work that I've done as a department director, overseeing common sense policing reforms, overseeing the COVID response, overseeing welcoming SD. I've also seen a better way forward. I teach public policy at UCSD about what other cities around the world are doing to solve their major problems and what gold standards we should be bringing here to implement for our residents. I've got plans to tackle all of the crises of the moment, but for me, it's not just theoretical, it's deeply personal. My family, working class family, dealt with some severe issues, whether it's debt or depression, divorce, or drugs. My dad went to prison when I was 6 years old for being one of the largest narcotics dealers in the United States. If it wasn't for a local library where I could ride my bike and learn to read, I would not have been on the path to be first in my family to attend college, much less a PhD, much less be here. We need to provide that same opportunity for all San Diego residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Havlick?
Good evening. Thank you. My name is Mandy Havlick, and I'm an active community member here within District 2. I am a land use advocate, an environmental advocate, a mother of two, and a military spouse. And our district is in need of a voice, and I won't be missing in action. I am an elected member of the Peninsula Community Planning Board, where I serve as the chair of the Traffic and Transportation Committee, the Environmental Committee, as well as the Parks Committee. And I'm also one of the co-founders of Kate's Trees. It's a nonprofit to continue on the legacy of tree planting like Kate Sessions in Balboa Park. I have and I will continue to keep the 30-foot coastal height limit in place, and I oppose Measure E due to the concern over environmental impacts to the community regarding projected sea level rise, the history of the topography of Midway, the lack of required park and open space needed in conjunction with the high density housing, and the severe lack of much needed infrastructure to support an additional 30,000 plus residents. We have a serious park deficit in District 2, and I view the Midway area as an opportunity to address some of this deficit and achieve affordable housing for families. We can plant and maintain more trees, and we can conserve our natural open spaces without building high rises or skyscrapers. I will fight to ensure that beach and coastal communities remain accessible to all. I opposed SB 9 and SB 10 and the ADU proposition due to the unregulated densification that it will bring to our communities. We need to see more action and accountability from City Hall in addressing the climate crisis, starting with protecting the existing trees and natural spaces in our communities. As an Indigenous woman, land use is near and dear to my heart, and I can and I will represent the needs of my constituents while advocating for a more accountable, open, and responsive City Council. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Hi, thank you. Thank you and good evening. I'm honored to have you consider me as your next city council member. I have a very diverse background with experience in healthcare, academics, business, and leadership. I hold several professional licenses in dentistry, nursing, real estate. I've been a professor and a small business owner. In the midst of the COVID pandemic, I started a dental fit testing business so that our San Diego dentists could take care of their patients. I've volunteered countless hours in the community, providing dental screenings and dental care to our residents. I'm a proven leader. I've been president of the San Diego County Dental Society, chairwoman of the Southern California section of the American College of Dentists, and trustee to the California Dental Association. I've served as a fiduciary to a nonprofit with over $500 million in assets, and I take this role very seriously. I live in the Sunset Cliffs neighborhood of our district. We in this district are so very fortunate to live in such a beautiful place that attracts visitors from all over. I truly love our community. However, I am so disappointed by the current state. I'm not a career politician. I'm a concerned, committed, frustrated resident and taxpayer. I'm frustrated by what I see, hear, and read about our neighborhoods on a daily basis. Tragically, we are struggling with an ever worsening homelessness crisis. Our crime rate is increasing, and our police simply don't have the manpower to tend to our calls. And our housing crisis is making it difficult to afford to live here. We must change our approach to these issues so that we can truly be America's finest city. I'm committed to the fight. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
Thank you. Thank you to the League of Women Voters. Thank you to San Diego 350.org for sponsoring tonight's event. I'm Lori Saldana. I'm a lifetime San Diegan. Grew up here in Claremont and was the child of a career Marine, a combat veteran, and went on to marry a combat veteran. So veterans issues and military affairs is something that I have a lifetime of experience with. My sisters and I all were able to afford to go to college in San Diego, the first in our family, and graduate with degrees and go on to various helping professions. I was very proud to become a professor at the community colleges where I attended classes before transferring to San Diego State and earning my undergraduate and graduate degree. So I know what a wonderful city San Diego is, and I've seen it grow and change. And there are many things that I have great respect for those changes, and other things I think we can all agree we need to improve. As a teacher at the Midway district, some of my students were unsheltered. I would leave class and see them panhandling on the Midway Rosecrans area and would struggle with finding them safe shelter. As chair of housing and community development in the assembly, I was also a state constitutional officer. I was a speaker pro tem. I helped fund more affordable housing for older adults and veterans in California. I would be honored to have your support to represent District 2, a district I've spent my entire life in and really do want to continue to protect the water quality, protect the environmental areas, the open spaces. And I would like to put my 6 years of state legislative experience to work on solving some of the homelessness and other problems that we face here in San Diego. So I look forward to tonight's debate, and thank you again to the coordinators for giving us a chance to meet people tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schmahaski.
I want to thank the League for allowing me the opportunity to share my vision for our city. The three issues that I will address during my term of office are San Diego homelessness, San Diego real estate costs, and the cost of San Diego city government. The homeless can be divided into three categories. Those who are mentally incapable of caring for themselves because of addictions, mental illness, or emotional problems. Those who want to get off the street but cannot find a job, and those who want to live outdoors. The mental health issue can be solved by converting some of our jails to specifically address mental health needs. The secure facility will be staffed with medical professionals instead of guards. With this approach, we will be addressing their problems as patients, not prisoners. For those who want to work, the city already has a program in place that pays citizens to perform public service. The program allows flexibility by allowing workers to only work and be paid when they need or want to work. The only requirement is to show up on time and be ready to work. For those who wish to camp out instead of work or accept medical assistance, we have plenty of vacant land that can be adapted for that purpose. The solution to bringing down housing costs is a charter change that prohibits the sale of city-owned land. Allow the developers of low and moderate housing to lease the land for $1 a year. Without the 25% cost of the land, we can deliver housing stock that is 75% under the market. We lease the land for the life of the structures that are built, and when the time is up, the land can be reused for another project. The cost
Thank you,
of
Mr.
city
Mich-
government.
Mr. Mish, your time is up, and I'm sure you're going to get to continue that discussion because we do have questions on those issues. Thank you very much. Okay, we're going to start the questions, and I'm going to start the first question with Ms. Lucas. What environmental issues are you most concerned about in the city of San Diego, and which ones would be a priority for your office?
Gosh, thank you for that question. This is a really important topic. So, you know, living here in San Diego, we have, we're constantly being faced with discussions about the lack of water in such an arid environment. Water conservation is greatly important, and there are ways to address it. We know that conservation works. So we need to incentivize our residents to do just that. It is a priority for me to also consider alternative methods to seek water. So for instance, I think there are ways that we can restart our desalination project in an efficient and cost-effective way.
Thank you. Ms. Havlick?
Did you know that in 2019, the city of San Diego actually removed more trees than it planted? And if we have policy like this, it's not going to be sustainable to achieve our environmental goals. Some of the ways I'd like to see environmental issues addressed is with tree planting. I'd like to see that expanded through all public spaces, public buildings. The expansion of solar installation, I feel, is much needed and necessary for us to meet our environmental goals. And I feel that the city has the opportunity to expand funding or vouchers or subsidies to allow solar to get in the hands of people who may not be able to afford it. And so those are some of the things I'd like to see, and as well have that solar installed in all public buildings. Another thing that could be easily cost effective is the expansion of our cycling network. We would be able to expand bike lanes, and it would increase the efficiency and the connection of our cycling network throughout our communities.
Thank you. Ms. Campbell?
Sorry, I have to go unmuted. Thank you very much for the question. I believe climate change is the most important issue facing our planet Earth at this time, even though we have so many important issues going on right now, including a big war that could end up destroying the Earth if nuclear weapons are employed. However, climate change has been tackled by San Diego starting in 2015 with the Climate Action Plan, which will soon be updated by the City Council. And very important is that we reduce greenhouse gases. And we can do that by improving our mass transportation and using it instead of using gas burning, carbon fueled fuel and automobiles. And we are moving toward that as rapidly as possible at this time, but I think it's going to get even more and more rapid as time goes on. I agree that finding our electricity by using clean energy is the best way to go forward. And I started the San Diego Community Power, and I'll go into that more later.
Thank you. Mr. Schmachowski?
The nonprofit Grid Alternatives is available to every low-income resident in San Diego, especially in Claremont. And if you need help with putting solar on your roof, Grid Alternatives will work it out with you where you don't pay one plug nickel. Now, going back to the bike lanes, I would get rid of 80% of the bike lanes and pay people to drive a little electric smart car like I do. The bike lanes are underused. We don't need them. The other issues regarding the environment are basically solar energy and electric cars. Planting trees is fine. I'm still waiting for the trees on Morena Boulevard, which I voted for 8 years ago. They never went in.
Thank you very much. Mr. Day?
I would do a few things. First of all, we need a long-term alternative to SDG&E's monopoly. We need to make sure that we're investing into less carbon and cheaper forms of energy here in San Diego. Secondly, I have a plan to convert joint use parks, convert existing lots that are laying barren in neighborhoods all throughout Claremont and the peninsula that are school district properties. Turning those into joint use parks is a #1 priority for our city parks and recs department. That creates more open green space. And we know that during the pandemic, green open space is public health. That's critical for the future and for generations of kids like mine. We need a real implementation plan to implement our climate action plan. And that means hiring a chief resiliency officer that reports directly to the mayor, not buried in bureaucracy, to deal with things like fire in our canyons, resilient infrastructure, dealing with the stormwater backlog that's poisoning our beaches and bays. That's critical. So I'd start there with the chief resiliency officer. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
Climate. If we don't manage that and we don't look at the city through a lens of how can we conserve energy, have more energy efficiency in our older homes, how can we help lower income families improve their structures so that they don't have to spend as much on their utility bills. There are so many things we can do at the city level. And at the state level, I was a co-author of AB 32, the nation's first greenhouse gas reduction bill. And I've worked on that as a Sierra Club chair. I've worked on that as a presidential appointee. I've worked on water and energy conservation throughout my career as an advocate and activist. So we need to put solar on every public building rooftop and over parking areas for city employees. We need to make sure, as a matter of security, that we have energy backup at our fire stations and our police stations. And I'm sure we'll get more time to talk about that. But I look at all of this through a climate lens. We have to address that and focus on that in all of our future planning.
Thank you very much. We do have some more specific environmental questions. The next one is, what will your office do to push implementation of the city's climate action plan and meet our climate goals? Ms. Campbell?
Thank you. I'm so used to being called Dr. Campbell that
I'm sorry, I can do
I don't
that.
realize you're calling on me. I'm sorry about the gap there. Okay, if we could start the clock over, please. Okay, so what my office has done, in my first month on the city council, I became the chair of the environment committee, which I headed for the first 2 years, 2019 and 2020. And the first thing we brought out from that committee with me as chair was the San Diego Community Power. It wasn't called that at the time, it was a community aggregation. But what that did was it brought forward the group that is now part of San Diego's the biggest part. We've got 6 other governments with us, including the county government. And that in May, all of us who live in San Diego will begin to be using that power, which is much greener than the power from SDG&E. And as the goal is 2035 to have 100% green energy.
Okay. Ms. Havlick?
2035 is just around the corner. And one thing I'd like to do is while we set the cap and we put these goals on paper and we set them for 2035, there's no real enforcement or mechanism to hold the city accountable for those goals. And I'd like to implement that along the way, along the path to 2035, that we set up goals and measurements to allocate funding and resources towards our environmental goals so that we're not just wrapping up a climate action plan in a nice little package and kicking it down to the future leadership of our city of San Diego. I really do see the easiest way to reduce carbon emissions today is to encourage more remote work or hybrid systems throughout our communities. I'd also like to see and support the expansion of rooftop solar and to allow the homeowners to continue have that tax credit and to expand the subsidies for that to ensure that they're affordable for all San Diegans to utilize that clean energy source.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
Could you repeat the question, please? I just want to make sure I'm on point.
What would your office do to push implementation of the city's climate action plan and meet our climate goals?
Well, get out from under an investor-owned utility. San Diego Gas and Electric charges the highest rates in the country. And it's not about energy generation, it's about transmission. So the way we do that is we do locally generated energy. And I'm on the board of a foundation that is working for that around the state of California. We want local solar and other clean forms of energy so we don't have risky transmission lines that could set the backcountry on fire. And we want to get out from under that investor-owned utility. So I will be focusing on renegotiating aspects of the franchise agreement with SDG&E. There's no reason in San Diego where we can generate so much energy with solar that we should have the highest utility rates in the country. And that's a burden on our households. It's a burden on our residents and businesses. And we need to renegotiate our way out of that with cleaner, locally generated energy. And that will be a priority for me and my office.
Thank you. Mr. Schmidhaskis?
I have a voting record. It's in the record. I voted for Choice Energy over and over and over again. But to paraphrase the Union Tribune, the climate action plan is pie in the sky. Circulate San Diego and other groups, they must go. These goals are unattainable. I can set a goal to do an Ironman triathlon, but the city is not going to make these benchmark goals they have. It's just ridiculous. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas, would you prefer I call you Dr. Lucas?
No, it's fine. Whatever you prefer.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you. So I support reduced use and non-use of modalities that require fossil fuels and natural gases and the transitioning to a greater use of alternative energy forms, and a plan that also includes repurposing, recycling, and or disposal of the components necessary to produce and store that energy. We have the perfect climate for outdoor active lifestyles here. Our city needs to be more walkable, bikeable, and offer greater access to efficient, affordable, mass and shared transportation. I support businesses being incentivized to offer hybrid work schedules to decrease travel to and from our workplaces.
Thank you. Mr. Day?
We're not transitioning fast enough. We're not addressing our goals fast enough, and we're falling behind. Other cities around the world have proven better models for addressing climate change and have reached their climate adaptation goals sometimes years before their goals said so. So I'm not giving up on this. Instead, we need somebody in charge. A couple months ago, when we had a hearing at the city council about who owns the climate action plan, who's responsible for it, who can we hold accountable, there was crickets. The answer is right now, 100 different people throughout the city are working on different components. And the reality is we need somebody that the voters can hold accountable, that city council can hold accountable, and that the mayor can hold accountable in order to make sure that we're achieving these goals. 100 cities around the world have a chief resiliency officer. Why don't we? Reporting directly to the city council and the mayor, they can own this entire implementation plan and we can hold them accountable for it.
Thank you. We'll start the next question with Mr. Schmahowski. What is your position on the revitalization of Mission Bay, specifically the city's De Anza Natural Area Amendment to the Mission Bay Park Master Plan?
Don't touch it. Keep it natural. I'm going back 58 years on Mission Bay. Now, I remember when the entire bay was a marsh. There was no bridge. There were no roads. There was nothing. We had to walk through a marsh. No development on Mission Bay. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Campbell?
Mission Bay has already been developed partially, at least to a great extent, because only 5% of the landmass there is now a marsh, a wetland. And we've learned in recent years with science that wetlands take in carbon dioxide and put out oxygen. So it's very important that we increase the amount of wetlands that we have. And we intend to do that. We have the Kendall Frost Marsh. We're going to expand it at the mouth of the creek that empties into it, and possibly extend it even more around the De Anza area. That question has not been resolved yet. It will be coming soon before City Council. The city is doing studies on which development, whether total marsh, partial marsh, or what would work. We know that in the past, the Coastal Commission has believed in a balanced use between recreation and nature. So hopefully we'll come to a balanced conclusion soon.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
As former chair of the city's Wetlands Advisory Board, we have to do everything we can to preserve what we have, add to it when it's feasible, and make sure that we have more than the 10% of wetlands left. We've lost 90% of our coastal wetlands around the state of California. So we need to conserve every acre, every square foot. And I'm very honored to have Dr. Isabel Kay, who's in charge of the Kendall Frost Lagoon or Kendall Frost area. She's been out supporting my campaign because she knows that I understand the necessity of protecting those wetlands, getting rid of any toxic waste left over from the mobile homes that were built at one time there on the water's edge, and really work as hard as possible to support a healthy wetlands and regenerate as much as we can. We've lost too much. There's too many species at risk. And so I look forward to the results of the environmental impact report to understand just how we can rewild Mission Bay.
Thank you. Mr. Day?
I believe in rewilding Mission Bay. It's one of the reasons why the League of Conservation has endorsed me in this race. League of Conservation voters know that we need to get serious about the entire ecosystem there, not just rewilding to get to a greater marshland, but we need to think systemically. If we don't solve our stormwater problem, with the stormwater runoff going from Rose Canyon and the silt that is rolling off from all of that pollution into the bay, the marshlands that we rewild, the science shows are going to be washed away. So this is an endemic problem. First, I would build a silt catch basin, give it to that chief resiliency officer that I'm talking about, because that is the only way we can actually rebuild the infrastructure of marshlands throughout the entire area. It's an area where my family and I visit almost every single weekend. It is a treasure for this district. It is the heart of this district. But we got to get serious about the steps necessary to get there and stop with these taglines and instead give voters an actual plan.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. I too support the preservation and protection of the wetlands. We need to preserve them, we need to expand them when possible, and we need to keep them clean and free of toxins. I would seek the advice of experts and the environmental impact plan for guidance as to the best measures possible.
Thank you. Ms. Havlick?
We need to plan for the effects of global warming today by not building on our tidelands. I support the rewilding and the expansion of Mission Bay for those purposes, as that will ensure that we have enough wetland to make our city more resilient to the effects of sea level rise and the climate. Our city has unsustainable environmental policies when it comes to wetlands. I know of one disturbed wetland in my community that's being advocated for housing needs, Famosa Canyon, which is adjacent to the Famosa Slough. And so we need environmental policy that is truly advocating for wetlands and protecting those much needed resources. As our incumbent stated earlier, they are actively pulling carbon out of our environment. You can't replicate it and you can't put a dollar value on it. And our city wants to push down and create a mitigation and restore a wetland in a different neighborhood. But our city of San Diego is on the front lines of the coastal sea level rise, and we need to do more when it comes to preserving wetlands and Mission Bay.
Thank you very much. Okay, I think we're going to move on from the environmental questions into housing questions. We'll start with Mr. Day. Which of the proposals for the development of the Midway area do you support and why? What is your opinion on the best way to increase affordable housing, and do you support raising the building height limit in Midway? I know that's a lot.
Yeah, this is a critical question. I mean, it's an all hands on deck moment for the city of San Diego. There's not a single market solution. We need to build government housing throughout the area. And I put forward a bold social housing plan to build on public lands, just like the one that you mentioned in Midway. It's time to stop divesting our resources, like our land, in these developer giveaways. And so I am skeptical that we have a solution in front of us with any of the five. There are aspects of each one of the five that I like, but we are in a housing crisis. And that housing crisis has to prioritize deeply affordable units and affordable units. And quite frankly, y'all, I don't think that we can get there with a developer that is solely looking for profits. We need to have subsidized housing throughout that area. And I'm on city council going to push for every single public parcel to have maximum density for affordable and deeply affordable units, because that's how we're going to get out of the hole that we're in right now.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
When I was chair of Assembly Housing and Community Development, we gave added funding to density to subsidize affordable housing. And I have no favorite in this mix. I'm letting the process go through. But I do favor we have not only affordable housing, but additional services. I know as somebody who's been a caregiver for older adults in my family, I've seen my friends struggle with childcare. We need to have on-site services to allow families to have a place where they can safely have the youngest and the oldest in their families cared for, because increasingly that's a huge cost burden on families. And if we can build that in, as some of the developers have proposed, that will go a long way towards affordability. We know we want more people, or more people want to work from home. COVID taught us that. So those are all elements I would look at, along with affordability, is building in elements that can allow people to live and work close to home and have childcare and older adult care be part of any new development.
Thank you. Dr. Campbell?
Thank you. Measure E was brought forward by myself, working in cooperation with Councilmember Chris Kate. I like to work in a bipartisan, balanced manner. Measure E was brought to us by the citizens of Midway. The Midway planning area is only about 980 acres, and 48 of those acres belong to the city. So only 48 of those acres are being debated among the five who are being looked at to develop those, with affordable housing and a new sports arena entertainment center. The whole neighborhood there needs to be revitalized. It has been blighted for many, many years, and it needs to be brought into a beautiful condition to make a gorgeous gateway into Point Loma. And it will be, if we could just get past all of the stumbling blocks in the way. I'm sure it's going to turn out fine. The state has told us we have to have at least 25% affordable housing. And frankly, our city wants even more.
Thank you. Ms. Havlick?
I have always been against Measure E. I am a firm defender of the 30-foot coastal height limit. That has allowed our communities to support the level of tourism. And the issue with Midway, it doesn't have to be, there's no one denying that Midway needs to be revitalized, and it can be done under the 30-foot height limit. I don't want to see these developers who are here to get as much money from our elected leadership say that they can't make affordable units while keeping it under the 30-foot height limit. I view the Midway area, especially the area around the river, as an opportunity to address our park deficit. And as sea level rise does impact our communities, it would allow for, if the development was away from the river, it would allow for more return on investment from city resources. But all this is again, a veiled attempt to transfer public land over to developers for campaign contributions and for the benefit of developers. And we deserve more transparency when it comes to these land use deals.
Thank you very much. Mr. Schmachowski?
Ultimately, Measure E will come to fruition. And as I spoke before council, I am in complete support of Mayor Gloria's proposal to build a state-of-the-art sports arena and finally bring the NHL and the NBA back to this great city and make it a greater city. Now, getting back to the climate issues regarding the Midway area, there's no reason we cannot have permeable concrete, trees on the rooftops like they do in Europe, etc. Now, one more issue. We're going to need 2 or 3 more on-ramps onto Interstate 8, maybe one onto Interstate 5. Otherwise, the traffic will be intolerable.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. So this is a really important issue. I think we can all agree that the Midway area is in dire need of redevelopment and revitalization. So just about, 3 or 4 weeks ago, I attended what I heard was the one and only planning meeting to introduce these developers to the community. And it was an interesting meeting. However, what I didn't hear was a plan on how the infrastructure, how our current infrastructure was supposed to handle the density. In my opinion, these are, all of the proposals are premature until we have an infrastructure plan in place.
Thank you very much. Okay, on to another housing question. With respect to the high cost of housing, how would you use your position to include more affordable housing development? Ms. Havlick?
Thank you. I'd like to expand the housing voucher program to allow people who need housing assistance to integrate in communities that are of their choice. I don't think us creating projects and othering people is a viable solution for the future needs of our housing. I'd also want to look at our housing needs on a holistic level. Currently, city leadership wants to build to address it. And unfortunately, that's not enough. We need to expand subsidies. We need to expand programs to get people, first-time home buyers, young families into homes, and potentially even converting some of our apartment stock into condos so that people can have the opportunity to expand their generational wealth into homes and become community members here. Those are some of the ways that I would like to address affordability here in our community. But we're not going to get it by building and busting through the 30-foot height limit and destroying all natural spaces in the name of affordability.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
Well, for starters, we could require that we follow state law because the law has changed. It used to be a 15% affordability ratio on new development on state lands and public lands. It's recently increased up to 25%, but we're looking at developments at Tailgate Park that are now enforcing the current law and the current requirements. So I would say I would look carefully what the requirements are for affordability. I would make sure we at least meet those minimums. And we need to be promoting development based on what San Diegans need, not what developers need. And if they can't meet that sweet spot of affordability and profitability, then I think we need to make sure the developers are coming up with a plan that can meet with the law and provide the housing that we need at the level that people can afford.
Thank you. Mr. Day?
Well, thinking long-term, in the next 10 years, the state data shows that we need 100,000 units just to stay at the basic levels of supply and demand that we're going to have. And out of that 100,000, 50,000 are going to need to be affordable and deeply affordable. The markets have shown they are not going to do that on their own. There has to be a plan for our city council to come along and build at least 50,000 new units. And so I put out a plan. It's up on my website in black and white that you can hold me accountable for. And it is for high quality, affordable social housing, which means that we are building units using a public land bank, pooling together the value of that land, and then building ourselves as a city, building those affordable units, because we can build our way out of this, especially for those affordable units. But we have to look at those best practices that are being used in Vienna and Singapore and Helsinki, because they're doing it. Why aren't we? That's where I would start.
Thank you. Mr. Schmachowski?
Hey, here's my philosophy. Stop selling city-owned land. Lease it. Stop the rezoning. Maintain the integrities of neighborhoods. Roll back a lot of this ADU stuff and adhere to the CC&Rs of the neighborhoods, the integrity of the neighborhoods. Like a bull in a china shop, the city is operating where they're completely dismantling all of the setback rules, all of the height rules, everything. Hook, line, and sinker. They won't stop. We need to rein this in to maintain the integrity of our neighborhoods, period. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Campbell?
Thank you very much. I think that, first of all, let me explain that Measure E only raised the height limit between 30 and 100 feet, went back to the baseline zoning in that 980 acres. So whatever that parcel was before the Coastal Act, it would go back to that level. So 100 feet would be the absolute highest. It wouldn't be skyscrapers, and it'd have to be zoned by that in the past. So let's get that straight. The other thing is the city is leasing the 48 acres. It is not selling it. And I just want you to know that we could have anywhere from 2,500 to 5,000 new housing units following those rules just on our 48 acres, along with a new sports arena and entertainment center. And on top of that, the area around it in Midway will see this growth, this beautiful new community, and that too will become a beautiful new neighborhood. We could have as many as 20, 25,000 new homes there. And that's what we need to do. We need to make more homes, but we have to keep San Diego its beautiful self.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. Would you please repeat the question for me?
Yes, with respect to the high cost of housing, how would you use your position to include more affordable housing?
Great, thank you. So it is becoming harder and harder to afford to live here. It's a devastating problem for families, for our children, for our businesses, and for our workers. Home ownership is no longer possible for many. I will advocate for programs that help create affordable housing while preserving the quality of our neighborhoods. The programs must be coordinated at the city, state, and federal level to be able to offer incentives that keep the costs stable. Our state in April just incentivized first-time home buyers with the ability to borrow up to 10% at 0% interest. And if they stay in their home for a period of time, that loan is forgiven. We now have to incentivize the other side of the equation, the developers, the homeowners, to keep their costs stable. We have to loosen regulations. We are over-regulated and overtaxed.
Thank you. Mr. Schmachowski, let's start this next question with you since you've already mentioned it. What is your opinion about the city's new approach to ADUs and how would you revise that approach?
The city of San Diego has gone too extreme. Too extreme. We need moderation. Moderation, and we need to roll back a lot of this and maybe revert to the mandates that the state imposed and not the city. The city is more liberal in building these ADUs. Now, very important, we have CC&Rs, covenants, restrictions in neighborhoods that ought to be, they need to be adhered to because they are a living document. And the people that bought their homes in these areas rely on that. That's why they bought their home. So make no mistake, I agree that we need these ADUs. I don't agree in the extremism, how extreme the city has gone. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Campbell?
Thank you so much. I think the new city ordinance about ADUs does go too far. I think that we should revert back to the state law, which goes far enough, maybe too far in itself. But one thing the city does, it allows you to build the ADU as tall as whatever the main house on that land is. The state law says, no, you must stop at 16 feet. There also were no setbacks in the city law. And I've been arguing with the city about this law for over a year now. And finally, this past January, I got the council to pass some reforms with the help of the fire department saying, look, this isn't safe. So we've gotten setbacks now. We've gotten distance from edges. And we also have to do other things. We need to get cars off the lawns. We need to make sure that the infrastructure is put in. And I just think that ADU law needs to go back to what the state mandated.
Thank you. Mr. Day?
Yeah, first we'll point out that the incumbent voted for the laws that she said that she just opposed. The reality is that we have to build 4 Midway developments size a year in order to meet our state RHNA mandated goals, which means ADUs aren't going to cut it, folks. I don't believe that ADUs are ever going to be a serious solution for our housing shortage. And that's why I put forward this serious plan about building on public lands with a public land bank. It's an alternative that doesn't grow up in people's backyards. It doesn't disturb the community. But here's the good news, folks. A Turner Center study out of the University of California, Berkeley, at the passing of SB 9 and SB 10, did a full feasibility study and said that at best, even with owner-occupied properties, that it would only be between 1% and 3% of our total housing needs. ADUs aren't going to cut it. I have a plan that will actually reduce the cost of housing for everybody in San Diego.
Thank you. Ms. Havlick?
Thank you. I am not in support of the ADU ordinance as it does take away much needed planting and viable planting spaces in our community. Our urban forestry is in the backyards of our communities. It's in the right of way and in the setbacks. And if you're thinking a 4-foot setback is an accomplishment, you can't achieve anything in a 4-foot setback and it's still too close to your neighbor. You know, you can't achieve tree canopy and the end result, it's only going to create concrete jungles. It's not going to ensure, there's no enforcement to ensure affordability of these units. And then with the no parking requirements, it creates an added burden to the community that density brings. We do need to make accommodations to have development in our communities that fits the construct of the neighbors, the neighborhoods. And I don't see ADUs doing anything to address the affordability with regards to housing in our communities.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
As I walk door to door and I talk with dozens of residents in HOAs, in single family homes, I hear complaints about this. And what they're concerned about is a lack of privacy. So let me just say what's been said before by the others, I agree with most of what they're saying. We need people to have insurances of privacy so they're not right up against another household that didn't exist when they bought their house. We need to make sure our infrastructure is up for the task. As chair of housing, the HOA conversions or the apartments to condo conversions, San Diego, my district, was ground zero in the state of California. And we saw the problems. We saw these old buildings being converted and people buying them and then having tremendous infrastructure problems. So I've seen this happen before. I want to make sure that we have the proper safety and infrastructure in place and privacy in place. People shouldn't have someone looking over their back fence from the second floor of an ADU. That's not why they bought that home. They need more privacy, security, and we need to do better on these ADU models.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. So I don't think there's one solution that will adequately solve the affordable housing crisis. I think we have to look for many solutions, and I think ADUs are practical solutions. So I am in support of them as long as they preserve the essence of the community and the infrastructure is in place. I think the state guidelines are more palatable than our current city guidelines, but I do support them. I think they are a good, plausible solution.
Thank you. Moving on to some transportation questions. How would you like to see public transportation expanded in your district and throughout the city? And what funding mechanism would you propose? Mr. Day?
Yeah, I think it's incredibly important that we connect our communities to the new blue line that is going up right through the spine of District 2. And that means when I talk to Sandag, when I talk to some of our regional planners, it means electric vehicle loops, a bus system that is entirely tailored to someone's experience, just like pulling up an Uber. The future of our district is being able to be in Point Loma with your family in a park and say, I want to go now to the new Midway development, and being able to pull up these very specific electric vehicle bus fleets. They should be on loop, and they should be absolutely connecting our communities to the trolley line. Here's a new idea that's incredibly important as well. We have thousands of vehicle trips going up Catalina and Rosecrans every single day by the military. I would work with them to make sure that that military traffic takes those electric shuttles as well from Navwar or from Old Town to make sure that they're not clogging up our city streets and adding to traffic.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
One of the things I've proposed, I live in the donut hole of the trolley. There's 2 miles to the north of us, in Claremont, 2 miles to the south of us. We need shuttles, electric light shuttles like they have downtown, free rides everywhere to get us to those trolley stations. And I also propose a similar, what I call freebie, instead of Fred, free rides everywhere downtown, I'm calling it free rides everywhere beaches. I would love to see a shuttle go from the Balboa station to the coast and then have free shuttles run up and down Mission Boulevard in a constant loop. I've talked to some of the business owners in Mission Beach, and they frankly are saying, yeah, every other coastal community has something like that. So if we could get tourists as well as residents out of their cars into these types of light shuttles that we have operating downtown, it would be better for air quality, it would slow traffic, it would be safer for pedestrians and cyclists. So I'm a big advocate of these light shuttles that will run continuously and get people, especially in coastal areas where there's a lot of short-term vacation rentals, and that's how we'll pay for it, with a fee on the tourists coming to those coastal communities.
Thank you. Dr. Campbell?
Thank you very much. As a matter of fact, I've worked on this issue with Sandag, and I was on the board of Sandag last year. So what I'd like to tell you is that indeed, Sandag is going to provide these electric vehicles in neighborhoods, for example, from the Balboa station to Pacific Beach. They won't be running 24 hours a day, but they will be at standard times. And I'm not sure if there'll be a charge for them or not. However, they're very necessary. What we put in the Balboa Station plan was a bridge that would bring bicycle riders and pedestrians up to the Balboa station from Pacific Beach. However, that didn't appear. Even though it's in the plan, it should have appeared. And so in the meantime, Sandag said, yes, we will do these electric vehicles. I think it's a good idea. I'd like to see bridge trolleys throughout our city, throughout our county, so that there are links everywhere. So you could go from one trolley to another and get wherever you need to be in the city.
Thank you. Mr. Schmachowski?
Here's the truth, and nothing but the truth. Sandag is a fiasco. Sandag must go. They are all elected officials except for the leader who is appointed, and they are a fiasco. When I was on the planning group, I voted for that bridge, and I voted for a tram that would go down the middle of Grand Avenue that would replicate my home in Europe, where I travel twice a year. I brought back the template. I brought back the information. Nobody would listen. Now, getting back to public transportation, I'll tell you the truth. It's a joke. Very few people take public transportation. Why not tell the truth? The truth is very few people take public transportation, and we need to figure out a way to get people where they're going. Either pay them to ditch their car, which I would recommend. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thanks. I love the idea of the light shuttles as we have downtown. I think they work for residents and tourists alike. I've taken them myself. They're fantastic. I also think we need to incentivize the use of our trolley systems by what I'm hearing is, a longer term plan for free trolley service. I don't know that it should be free, but it should be an affordable cost to get us out of our cars.
Thank you. Ms. Havlick?
A lot of what we have right now is inefficient transportation options throughout our city. And we do need to incentivize people to get out of their cars and to find more environmentally sound ways to transit through our city. But the problem is our current system is not connected, it's not efficient, and it's not economical. So I'd like to see more expansion of the services to make it more efficient to get from point A to point B, as well as reduce the cost. We have a lot of college students, and it's an equity issue. A lot of people with lower incomes cannot afford to pay the cost to utilize those services. And so we need to do better when it comes to offering affordable transit services. Another idea would be, again, to expand the efficiency of them, connecting trolleys and shuttles for disabled and elderly populace, people part of our communities, to help them connect to transportation that's more environmentally sound as well. Those are ways I would help promote transit in our communities.
Thank you. Moving on to questions on the homeless. What would you do to address the problem of homelessness, especially in the coastal and recreational areas, including the increased van habitation in our parks and recreation areas? Mr. Schmachowski?
As I mentioned earlier, the homeless can be divided into three categories. Those who are mentally incapable of caring for themselves because of addictions, mental illness, or emotional problems. Those who want to get off the street but cannot find a job. And those who want to live outdoors. The mental health issue can be solved by converting some of our jails to specifically address mental health needs. The secure facility will be staffed with medical professionals instead of guards. With this approach, we will be addressing their problems as patients, not prisoners. And for those who want to work, the city already has a program in place that pays citizens to perform public service. The program allows flexibility by allowing workers to only work and be paid when they need or want to work. The only requirement is to show up on time and be ready to work. And for those who want to camp out instead of work or accept medical assistance, we have plenty of vacant land that can be adapted for that purpose. Amen. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
we have a very high mortality rate in people who are unsheltered. COVID death rates were so much higher, and I called Dr. Campbell with concerns about that several months ago. We need emergency supportive housing for people, and shelters will not work for older adults. You can't tell somebody who's older and disabled to climb up on a top bunk. A lot of people don't go into the shelters now because they simply aren't physically able. They don't feel safe in those shelters. So we need to provide immediate recuperative housing for people who are sick and recovering. And we need to transform, frankly, a lot of our short-term vacation rentals back into housing. I realize there's a new ordinance, but the fact is, it's been estimated 16,000 houses were converted to short-term vacation rentals. And this year they vaccinated about 16,000 unsheltered San Diegans countywide. So I believe there's a direct nexus between having these short-term vacation rentals and mini hotels and losing housing for so many people. We need to readdress those short-term vacation rentals and get people into permanent housing.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. Homelessness is such a complex problem. I will work with the city and regional partners to address the root causes of the problem. Tragically, overwhelmingly, they are mental illness and drug abuse. I support programs that offer supportive treatment, comprehensive supportive treatment, meaning counseling for their mental illness or their addiction, dental, medical care, workforce training. We need to get our homeless populations off the street. It's not safe for them, and it's not safe for our communities. And I will ensure that they are not using our parks, our canyons, and our sidewalks as their homes.
Thank you. Ms. Havlick?
Homelessness is not going to go away. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of compassion to address these issues. I see the city, one, trying to bureaucratize homelessness and put it in a one-size-fits-all. As stated earlier, yes, short-term vacation rentals do contribute to the lack of housing inventory, and that industry is being put on the backs of people trying to find long-term housing. And so the second part is we need to be building the housing that we can connect homelessness people and get them off the street. And the type of housing that's I'm seeing continually put across my desk is market rate housing, or it's for people with an adjusted AMI of 80%, 70%. It needs to be for those within the below 30% or 50% AMI to truly address the issue with getting homelessness off of our streets. And finally, I'd like to see the city to remove the restrictions to getting help. Lots of people are homeless for a variety of different reasons, and the city needs to remove the restrictions for people trying to get help.
Thank you. Mr. Day?
I'll tell you what, plans that don't center on homes miss the entire point. It's right there in the name, homelessness. And so what I wouldn't do are plans that duplicate county public health efforts. What I wouldn't do is start with other things that play whack-a-mole around town. Instead, we need to get serious about a plan, a short, medium, and long-term plan for making sure that we're addressing the root causes of homelessness, like poverty. The other things exacerbate mental health issues exacerbate homelessness, absolutely. But the reality is that I'm the only candidate who's presented a short, medium, and long-term plan in this race. A short-term plan that includes safe camping sites, safe tenting sites with full bathrooms and showers, master lease agreements, getting units into the city so that they can directly lease to homeless individuals. And finally, a long-term plan to build social housing. I put that out in an op-ed in the Voice of San Diego. You can check it out. It's also on my website, joeldaysd.com/room for all.
Thank you. Dr. Campbell?
Thank you for the question. This is dear to my heart. I did a lot of research on this subject, and I can tell you that we are making some progress in the city. Of course, none of it is fast enough or good enough, but we're going to continue to try until we resolve this issue. And for the first time in the past year and a half, the county has finally been working with us. Health and Human Services is under the county's control, and therefore we need them to be a good partner with us. We have more of the homeless in our city than anywhere else in the county, and we have less available free land to do something with, to build housing for them. So in the last week, I've done two big things to help with this. One is conservatorship, and the other is we opened a new shelter in Midway that's devoted to treating those who are addicted. It's a 44-bed unit. It's been very successful. It's only been open 3 months. And we're also opening a new unit in the Midway area next to the hospital on Rosecrans Street. It's county land. We're doing it with the county and the Lucky Duck Foundation, and that will be open hopefully in 2 more months.
Thank you. We had a lot of people ask this question. What is your position on the People's Ordinance? Ms. Havlick?
Well, thank you. Sorry about that. With regard to the people ordinance, right now, our communities are being bogged down by inflation, by taxes, by energy costs, by housing costs, and by energy bills that are not sustainable. And I don't feel like at this time that I would like to remove a service that our tax dollars pay for and add unnecessary taxation again to our community with regards to trash removal and services that our city needs to provide. I definitely would like to see more enforcement with regards to green waste and the green bins. I'd like to see those appear in our community so that we can compost and address methane in our landfills. But again, I don't see the People's Ordinance being removed at this time as a viably economical solution for the city, for our community members.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
$500,000 was a subsidy for short-term vacation rentals in Mission Beach by Council Member Lori Zapp a few years ago. We can't allow short-term vacation rentals to have free trash pickup. They are not residents. They are businesses. And that's a big chunk of that money that we could be saving right there. For green waste, we don't need to haul it all to Miramar. We need to set up community gardens, encourage people to do more composting. As someone who is a gardener and a lot of people in Claremont, we can grow anything in this climate. We would love to have green waste near our homes that we can go use to supplement our clay soil. And the beaches, I visited the native plant gardens and others in Point Loma. Let's get that green waste back into the nutrients of our soil so people can grow food and flowers. It's not a waste. It is actually a resource. So those are ways that we can reduce the cost of landfilling trash and mostly get short-term vacation rentals off of free trash pickup. They really are being subsidized by the rest of San Diegans.
Thank you. Dr. Campbell?
I call the People's Ordinance the Pigs Ordinance because it was passed in something like 1911, 1919, when downtown was nothing but a pigsty. And everybody brought their garbage downtown and the pigs ate it. And that's when that went into the city charter. And so it's way out of date. And it's unfair because people live in apartment houses or condos. They have to pay for trash pickup. Maybe the landlord pays for it, but believe me, it shows up in the rent. It shows up in the HOA fees. So it's not fair that people who own their own home get free trash, but those who don't get free trash. On the other hand, we're in a rough time in our economy. Inflation is going up, prices are going crazy, gas is going up. And so charging homeowners $10 to $30 to $40 a month for trash pickup might be very hard, especially on the elderly. So it's a difficult situation, but it is out of date and we need to rethink it. It costs our general fund almost $100 million when you add in what we're going to have to pay for the new state green law that is now in effect.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. You know, this is a tricky one because I can totally understand how some consider it inequitable. But I cannot support any more fees. Every time we have issues, the taxpayers, the residents of our community have to shoulder the burden of more fees. I truly support the green bins and incentivizing for composting. I think that will help reduce the cost going into the landfills. I think that was a wonderful idea, but I just cannot support more fees passed on to our residents.
Thank you. Mr. Day?
Yeah, people are suffering. People are hurting with SDG&E rates going sky high with the cost of housing. I had somebody tell me it just feels like the wolf is at the door all the time. It is unfair. And I think that Jen is right about that. It's absolutely unfair that in a city where we have record revenues, record money coming into our city, that we're not doing the exact opposite of what this proposal intends to do, and that is expanding the free service to everyone. We can actually help people who are saying the wolf is at the door, who are paying these exorbitant new fees to SDG&E. We can actually help that out. We can also use those new resources to get new programs in, making sure that we have weekly recycle pickup rather than this every 2 weeks recycle pickup. That's how we can achieve climate action. That's how we can actually help people in our communities. So I would do the exact opposite, because we know that people are hurting and there's a pathway for us to solve it for them.
Thank you. Mr. Schmachowski?
I'm a little bit confused after hearing the last speaker. Are we talking about the trash pickup, the people's ordinance? Because
Yes,
I'll
we
tell
are.
you what, I'll tell you the truth. I'll tell you the truth here. I'm not going to pull any punches. We have committees on the city council to work out the devil in the details. The trash pickup, which goes back 100 years, that's an anachronism. It's out of touch. And I'm going to tell you the truth, okay? We're going to have to charge for trash pickup, but the details will be worked out in committee when, if there are low-income folks, will not pay any fee. If they're low income, they will be exempt. Many people will be exempt, but the devil is in the details. And overall, we've got to go forward and change this policy and charge people.
Thank you very much. I think we're going to have time for just one more question, and it's going to be, what is your opinion about transferring the hiring power to the mayor from the Civil Service Commission? Dr. Campbell?
The hiring, okay, so what you're talking about is, at the city, we have two offices that do hiring. One is called Human Resources and one is called the Personnel Department. Almost every company, every city in the world has only one. And so it's been a real problem. The Personnel Department will often take 6 months before someone that a department wishes to hire will clear them for being hired by that department. In the meantime, they find another job. So we have 1,200 vacancies in the city right now, and we need to fill them. And so there's our alternative. We have a human resources department that's very efficient. So I believe that maybe we better figure out how to be more efficient in the personnel department, or we better switch to the human resources department. We will keep the Civil Service Commission and we will keep civil service, but we need to get much more efficient in how we handle hiring.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
I agree with the efficiency. For years, I actually discouraged my students in business information technology from applying to the city because they weren't getting any long-term security. They weren't getting their pension. They weren't getting Social Security. So now we're going to see an influx of people. Now that pensions have been restored, I look forward to having the city attract more people because they see an option for a long-term career. So we definitely need to streamline the system. We need to be ready as a city government to go through the process of screening and hiring more people. But I really am concerned that the mayor's office under the strong mayor already has tremendous control, and I'm not confident that that's a good place to put this. I think it needs to be under a department where there's more transparency. And as we've seen the strong mayor office develop, there's been less transparency and less give and take with the council. So I don't think I want it under the mayor's office, but I know we need to streamline it and attract more qualified people now that we've gotten our pension system under control.
Thank you. Mr. Schmachowski?
Would you mind repeating the question?
What is your opinion about transferring hiring power to the mayor from the Civil Service Commission?
No, I would not allow it. No, I think we're scapegoating the Civil Service Commission, and I would never allow it because it leads to cronyism. It leads to inside deals. We already have too much cronyism in this city. We already have too many elite people running the government. We don't need more of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Day?
Yeah, I think that it's a blatant power grab and a strong mayor system that takes more positions out of the civil service, which is there to serve the public and not necessarily a political agenda. At your city council, as your city council member, I'm going to try to protect that civil service fairness. We need to stop exempting positions to go from the civil service into political appointments. And the reality is, actually, when you look at the data, the personnel department hires at a far faster rate than HR and a mayoral level appointment. The reality is that it is not the personnel department's inefficiencies or the Civil Service Commission's inefficiencies that are at play here, but we have years and years. In the past 4 years, for example, our fire department's hardly seen a single raise. They're ranked 22 out of 22 in terms of how well they're being compensated. So we need to start there. Better compensation for our employees, and then they will come.
Thank you. Ms. Havlick?
We need to create efficiency throughout all of our city departments. And I'd like to expand the efficiency as well as the modernization of the hiring process. It shouldn't take that amount of time to get talent to fill much needed city staff requisitions. We do need to put out a more emphasis in providing livable wages and competitive wages. Time and time again, I'm hearing our talent is going to other municipalities, other cities nearby, because they offer more competitive wages. We need to offer that to our city public service officers and those city staff so that we can retain that talent and for those who continue to serve. But again, I would also agree that we have a strong mayor. And we don't need the mayor padding up his coffers in our community with yes men and people who are just going to do what he asks and toe the party line or rubber stamp all of his policies. And so we need to have more transparency when it comes to the hiring process. And I disagree. The mayor needs to stay out of it.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. So I support maintaining the Civil Service Commission. I think it ensures a fair and equitable process. However, I think there is opportunity to increase the efficiency of the system.
Thank you. Well, before our candidates give their closing remarks, I just want to thank you all for attending and asking such good questions. Be sure you're registered to vote, and you vote by June 7th. You should have, if you are a registered voter, your ballot mailed to you by May 9th. Also, please attend more league events where we give in-depth information on all sides of critical issues affecting our communities. So we will now go to closing statements, and we will start with Mr. Schmachowski.
Ladies and gentlemen, do your homework. Find out who is endorsing who, and then connect the dots. If you connect the dots, you're going to find out that there's a lot of disingenuous talk tonight. You will find that out. I am a man of truth. I will tell you the truth. I will not tell you what you want to hear. I will tell you what you ought to hear. Now, the eviction moratorium is no good public policy. It must go. I completely disagree with the eviction moratorium. I completely disagree with scooters. When I'm elected, I will work to get rid of every scooter in San Diego. We don't need scooters. We need private property rights. We need rights that will protect you, the homeowner, in your home, what you work for, what your mama and papa worked for, what your grandparents worked for. All those good people in Point Loma and Claremont who worked a lifetime for their property to be under assault by this administration is tragic. very tragic. And I'll go back to square one. I will never mislead you. Never. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Saldana?
Thank you again to the host organizations, and thank you to the moderator, Donna, for doing such a very good job and keeping us on point. And thanks to everyone who submitted questions. It's always important to have these types of forums and discussions, so I really appreciate the format. I appreciate the people who are watching and listening. And I just want to say, as the person who has the most previous elected experience, for some reason, politics is the one area, career politician is often used as an insult, but I'm proud of the 6 years that I served in the legislature and the leadership role that I took at that time to get us through some really tough years when we had to do drastic cuts to the budget. I fear we're heading towards that again as chair of housing. I saw this housing bubble 10 years ago, and I really want to make sure as I enter the city council that I'll be able to help steer us in directions that conserve the resources we have, thanks to federal support and state support, but also take into account that things are going to be changing potentially very quickly. I'm the one candidate here who has that level of experience, who has worked on housing and homelessness, who has grown up in San Diego and knows how great this community is. And it's great because of the people. We have a highly educated community. We have people who are very concerned about pollution in the coastal areas. We have people who want to protect the environment, and they have the smarts and the good sense, and they know how to do it. And I've worked with them for many years, and I look forward to continuing to work with them to solve these problems, because I know we have the resources, we have the ability. What we need are people who are willing to step up and take the action. We need fully staffed advisory boards. We need enough people to keep a quorum and make recommendations on things like sustainable energy and other areas where we need their expertise and their assistance. Please support me. I will make sure that the community comes first, and I welcome your support of my campaign. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lucas?
Thank you. So I would like to thank you for your time and leave you with the following message. So our district is a very special place, and we are very fortunate to live here. I'm passionate about it, and I think you are too, which is why you took your time to attend this forum. It is very important to me to work together with you. We are facing tough issues. I want to hear your thoughts, concerns, and potential solutions to make our district a better place. I am committed to fiscally responsible, environmentally sensible policies and programs that support business, education, economic growth and development, and that enhance our quality of life now and for our future generations. As your council member, I will be present in the communities, and our district, your voice will be heard at City Hall. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Havlick?
We need a fresh new perspective for D2. I'm running because I want to protect our #1 asset, our coast. We're blessed with stunning beaches and 2 great bays with the finest weather for outdoor sports and recreation. It's the foundation of our reputation of being at the forefront of California's classic, cool, outdoor coastal lifestyle. I want to increase walkability and cyclability of our communities. I want to provide sensible rules for short-term vacation rentals. I will advocate for more parks and as well seek ways to properly maintain and staff those parks to preserve our natural resources. Instead of continuing to commercialize our coastal public lands and walling off the coast from residents and tourists alike, we need to turn direction and seek to expand access and opportunities to enjoy the coast for everyone. I am uniquely suited to partner with community planning groups and non-governmental organizations to solve our most pressing issues in an open and honest way that includes the community. I will bring much needed common sense back to City Hall where it belongs. The community is not getting the respect it deserves, and the lack of transparency and lack of values in our current city leadership is appalling. We need to do more to gain consensus from the community rather than from those who donate to our political campaigns. We need to have policy brought forth by community members, not by corporations or lobbyists or corporate interests. I have long been an advocate for a safer and more inclusive District 2. We need someone who's not just going to talk about it, but be about it when it comes to community issues. I intend to bring community back to City Hall where it belongs. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate all the work that went into hosting this event tonight. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Day?
The other day, I was walking in Ocean Beach. I stopped at Ebers Community Park and talked with a dad who was there with his 3-year-old kid. He said, I love it here. It's getting costly. It feels like every day there's another failure, another scandal, land use deals in the courts, giveaways to Airbnb and SDG&E. He said, but what really bothers me is that every time I come to this park, I have to look for hypodermic needles to make sure that my kid doesn't get jabbed. It feels like our community is being hollowed out and that the city just doesn't care. We can't stay where we are, folks. We can't go backwards. Families feel like we were talking about earlier. They feel like the wolf is at the door. I'm somebody who has worked across every department in every neighborhood of our city, grappling with the big issues like policing reforms, COVID-19 response, and welcoming immigrants and refugees. Now, things have gotten worse over the last couple of years. Homelessness, housing, we've gone the wrong way. I've presented a series of plans up on my website that you can look in black and white to hold me accountable, because that's what I teach at UCSD. Best practices from around the world that we can employ here and make our own. If your family is wondering what we're leaving the next generation, we need new leadership. I'm asking for your vote because my family feels the exact same thing. I'm ready to fight for your family as hard as I'm fighting for mine. And I've got an experience and track record and a plan to make your family's life better. That's why I'm running, and that's why I'm asking for your vote today. Thanks.
Thank you. Dr. Campbell?
Thank you, and thank you to the Claremont Town Council, League of Women Voters, and San Diego 350 for sponsoring this tonight. I am a Claremonter and started out on community service in the Claremont Town Council. So I really appreciate this and I feel right at home here. I'm so glad we have Claremont in our district now. In my first term representing District 2, I've done what's right for San Diego and what's right for our communities, even when it meant standing up to powerful special interests and the status quo. When anti-vaccine extremists tried to derail our COVID response, I stood firm and we protected San Diego's safety. We stopped evictions. We relied on science. And now our city has a 90% vaccination rate, among the highest in the nation. When people told me I couldn't get anything done on vacation rentals, I got everyone together and found a compromise, a 50% reduction in short-term rentals, common sense regulations. Finally, I'm running to keep delivering for the people, because in tough times, working families need leaders we can count on to tackle the toughest challenges: homelessness, housing, crime, and now the crazy cost of living. I'm proud to be endorsed by Todd Gloria and Nathan Fletcher, many unions, the Healthcare Workers Union, and many others. I spent my whole life as a doctor working to keep families healthy and safe, and I will never give up that fight. I've done the hard things, I've solved many hard issues, and I am your city council member, and I hope that you will return me for a second term. That'll be my last 4 years. And thank you for your time tonight, and thank you for your support. I hope I can count on you, and I want you to know that I'm very happy that at this time, finally, District 2 includes all of Claremont. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Well, on behalf of the League of Women Voters of San Diego, the Claremont Town Council, and San Diego 350, I want to thank the candidates for running for office and for attending this forum this evening. And thank you all again. You're here tonight because you follow the League motto: don't just be a voter, be an informed voter. Thank you all and good night.